Speaking English feels scary sometimes, but today we will make it feel easier together. Do not worry about perfect English. Just relax, listen, and speak with me. Many learners stay silent, not because they cannot speak, but because anxiety stops their voice. Today, you will learn 3 simple tips that can help you speak more calmly and more confidently. And while you listen, try to shadow every sentence softly. Hear the sound, copy the rhythm, and let your mouth move naturally. No pressure. No fast speaking, just calm, clear English practice. Take a slow breath, and let's begin this shadowing practice together. I was about to call you. That movie was far more interesting than I expected. You should probably check the message again. I have never heard that excuse before. The room felt unusually quiet today. She kept looking at her phone. During the meeting. I almost forgot what I wanted to say. That sounds much better than the first idea. He suddenly changed the topic. For no reason. The weather looks strange this evening. I honestly did not expect that reaction. Someone left the window open all night. This place feels different after sunset. I would rather stay here a little longer. That was not the answer I was waiting for. You seem unusually calm today. I nearly missed the most important detail. The conversation became awkward very quickly. I should have listened more carefully earlier. Nobody noticed the mistake at first. That explanation sounds a little confusing. I could barely hear your voice there. Everything happened faster than we expected. She looked disappointed, but stayed silent. The restaurant was surprisingly empty tonight. I have been thinking about that situation all day. He reacted as if nothing had happened. That decision might create more problems later. The train arrived much earlier than usual. I cannot believe we forgot about that. Her response sounded a little uncertain. I did not realize how late it was. Some people avoid difficult conversations completely. The lights suddenly went out upstairs. I was not prepared for that question. That joke was actually pretty clever. He pretended not to notice the tension. The atmosphere feels more relaxed now. I wish people spoke more honestly sometimes. That was a surprisingly mature response. The cafe became crowded within minutes. I still remember that strange conversation clearly. She quietly closed the door behind her. That situation could have ended badly. You handled that conversation very smoothly.
I would never have agreed if I had known the full story.
The discussion became increasingly complicated after that question. She responded with far more confidence than I expected. By the time we arrived, the situation had already changed. He tends to avoid conversations that require emotional honesty.
The presentation was surprisingly persuasive, despite the technical issues.
The presentation was surprisingly persuasive, despite the technical issues.
I cannot entirely blame her for reacting that way.
I cannot entirely blame her for reacting that way.
The atmosphere grew noticeably tense. Within a few minutes,
The atmosphere grew noticeably tense.
within a few minutes,
She spoke as though she had rehearsed every sentence beforehand. She spoke as though she had rehearsed every sentence beforehand.
that argument could easily have been avoided with clearer communication.
That argument could easily have been avoided with clearer communication.
He looked completely unfazed by the unexpected criticism.
He looked completely unfazed by the unexpected criticism.
I was under the impression that everyone had already agreed.
I was under the impression that everyone had already agreed. The conversation drifted into uncomfortable territory rather quickly. The conversation drifted into uncomfortable territory rather quickly. She handled the interruption with remarkable patience and composure. She handled the interruption with remarkable patience and composure. I had serious doubts about whether the plan would succeed. I had serious doubts about whether the plan would succeed. The details were deliberately left vague during the announcement. The details were deliberately left vague during the announcement. He appeared genuinely surprised by the final decision. He appeared genuinely surprised by the final decision. There is no guarantee that the outcome will improve soon. There is no guarantee that the outcome will improve soon. The meeting was postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. The meeting was postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. She gradually became more comfortable as the conversation continued. She gradually became more comfortable as the conversation continued. The entire situation felt oddly familiar for some reason. The entire situation felt oddly familiar for some reason. I find it difficult to trust people who constantly change their opinions. I find it difficult to trust people who constantly change their opinions. He reacted with a level of maturity that impressed everyone. He reacted with a level of maturity that impressed everyone. The audience remained unusually silent. Throughout the discussion, the audience remained unusually silent. Throughout the discussion, that explanation raises more questions than answers. That explanation raises more questions than answers. She hesitated briefly before answering the difficult question. She hesitated briefly before answering the difficult question. I was not entirely convinced by his explanation. I was not entirely convinced by his explanation. The proposal sounded reasonable, at least at first glance. The proposal sounded reasonable, at least at first glance. He managed to remain calm under an incredible amount of pressure. He managed to remain calm under an incredible amount of pressure. The tone of the conversation shifted dramatically after that comment. The tone of the conversation shifted dramatically after that comment. I would appreciate it if you could clarify your point further. I would appreciate it if you could clarify your point further. She seemed reluctant to discuss what had actually happened. She seemed reluctant to discuss what had actually happened. The project was far more demanding than we initially anticipated. The project was far more demanding than we initially anticipated. He expressed his frustration in a surprisingly calm manner. He expressed his frustration in a surprisingly calm manner. The decision ultimately depended on factors beyond our control. The decision ultimately depended on factors beyond our control. I could sense the disappointment in her voice immediately. I could sense the disappointment in her voice immediately. The situation escalated unnecessarily because nobody stayed calm. The situation escalated unnecessarily because nobody stayed calm. She maintained eye contact throughout the entire conversation. She maintained eye contact throughout the entire conversation. The announcement caught everyone completely off guard. The announcement caught everyone completely off guard. I would rather remain silent than say something dishonest. I would rather remain silent than say something dishonest. The discussion became significantly more productive after the break.
The discussion became significantly more productive after the break. He seemed genuinely curious rather than judgmental. He seemed genuinely curious rather than judgmental. The explanation was so detailed that nobody interrupted him. The explanation was so detailed that nobody interrupted him. I had not realized how emotionally exhausting the situation had become. I had not realized how emotionally exhausting the situation had become. The atmosphere inside the room felt unusually formal. The atmosphere inside the room felt unusually formal. She calmly explained the issue without raising her voice once. She calmly explained the issue without raising her voice once. The conversation would have gone more smoothly with better timing. The conversation would have gone more smoothly with better timing. He appeared confident externally, although he seemed nervous underneath. He appeared confident externally, although he seemed nervous underneath. The situation became increasingly unpredictable as the night continued. The situation became increasingly unpredictable as the night continued. I was genuinely relieved when the misunderstanding was finally resolved. I was genuinely relieved when the misunderstanding was finally resolved. I did not expect the traffic to be this bad. I did not expect the traffic to be this bad. She looked tired after the long meeting. She looked tired after the long meeting. That idea sounds better than the previous one. That idea sounds better than the previous one. He forgot to reply to my message again. He forgot to reply to my message again. The cafe was quieter than usual today. The cafe was quieter than usual today. I almost missed the beginning of the movie. I almost missed the beginning of the movie. She smiled politely, but looked uncomfortable. She smiled politely, but looked uncomfortable. His jacket feels much warmer than I thought. His jacket feels much warmer than I thought. He suddenly stopped talking in the middle of the sentence. He suddenly stopped talking in the middle of the sentence. The music downstairs is getting louder. The music downstairs is getting louder. I have not seen him this excited before. I have not seen him this excited before. That comment made the situation awkward. That comment made the situation awkward. The store was already closed when we arrived. The store was already closed when we arrived. She carefully checked the document again. She carefully checked the document again. I could not understand what he meant at first. I could not understand what he meant at first. The conversation became more interesting later. The conversation became more interesting later. He usually arrives earlier than everyone else. He usually arrives earlier than everyone else. That decision surprised a lot of people. That decision surprised a lot of people. The room feels colder this evening. The room feels colder this evening. I honestly forgot about the appointment. I honestly forgot about the appointment. She kept asking the same question repeatedly. She kept asking the same question repeatedly. The line outside the restaurant was extremely long. The line outside the restaurant was extremely long. I was not ready for such a serious discussion. I was not ready for such a serious discussion. He seemed distracted during the conversation. He seemed distracted during the conversation. The bus arrived much later than expected. The bus arrived much later than expected. I nearly dropped my phone on the floor. I nearly dropped my phone on the floor. That explanation was clearer this time. That explanation was clearer this time. She quietly walked out of the room. She quietly walked out of the room. The movie ended differently than I imagined. The movie ended differently than I imagined. I think we misunderstood each other earlier. I think we misunderstood each other earlier. He looked nervous before the interview started. He looked nervous before the interview started. The restaurant became crowded after sunset. The restaurant became crowded after sunset. I cannot remember where I left my keys. I cannot remember where I left my keys. That conversation lasted much longer than expected. That conversation lasted much longer than expected. She sounded more confident today. She sounded more confident today. The lights in the hallway kept flickering. The lights in the hallway kept flickering. I was confused by his reaction initially. I was confused by his reaction initially. He quickly changed the subject again. He quickly changed the subject again. The weather feels unusually humid tonight. The weather feels unusually humid tonight. I wish the meeting had started earlier. I wish the meeting had started earlier. She handled the situation very calmly. She handled the situation very calmly. That message sounded a little strange to me. That message sounded a little strange to me. The train station was surprisingly empty. The train station was surprisingly empty. I was expecting a completely different answer. I was expecting a completely different answer. He looked around as if searching for someone. He looked around
as if searching for someone.
The discussion became quieter after that comment. The discussion became quieter after that comment.
I've been thinking about that idea all day.
I have been thinking about that idea all day. She opened the window to let fresh air in. She opened the window to let fresh air in. That situation could easily happen again. That situation could easily happen again. The phone battery died at the worst moment. The phone battery died at the worst moment. Little by little, your voice will start to feel more natural.
Do not rush yourself.
Confidence grows with calm, daily practice. The more you shadow, the easier speaking will become. Even a few minutes every day can slowly reduce speaking anxiety.